fellow travelers on the path, on this caravan, which is leading, as we know, to eternity. That's where we're going.
Okay.
And we are being led by a man. It took me a long time to think of what the right word was to call Hazrat Inayat. I mean, Hazrat is a very good word. It means presence. It means someone who is gone but is present, still present. In fact, let's just take a moment, close your eyes, and feel that presence. Especially, of course, you can feel it here, but also even more so if you go to where he lived in Shiren for the last years of his life. If you go into his home, or even more especially, I had the privilege of working in the archive of the Nekmat Foundation across the street, where Murshid used to go every afternoon and sit with his secretary, Sakina Fournay, and dictate his biography, other kinds of material. The two chairs they sat on are still in that room. And you can go and sit there. It takes a little finagling to get in, but you can go.
Bribery helps.
and you can sit there. And so many people have had just the most extraordinary experiences of Murshids Presence in that room, because it's very pure. I mean, many things have happened in the house, but very little has happened in that room in the archive. And Murshids Presence is glowing there. I had the great privilege of working there for 30 years. Every day going over everything that Murshid said, very exactly, taken down in shorthand, transcribed exactly. And, well, it was the greatest job anybody's ever had. People are grateful to me. I am grateful for that incredible opportunity, and I never will understand how I stumbled into that joy, but I'm eternally grateful. Now, I've suggested that I might speak a little bit about Murshid's last days here in Delhi, and I'll try to do so briefly. The last day Murshid was among his Murids was the 13th of September, 1926, and by some strange coincidence or serendipity or whatever you want to call it, there happened to be somebody there with a movie camera. So you've all seen some of the film from that last day he spent among his Murids. He then went to Geneva and had the yearly meetings, which I'm happy to say in 1926 went very well. The meetings in the previous year had been something of a disaster from Murshid's point of view, but we don't need to talk about that. It was all corrected by that time. And then he got a ship out of Venice and took with him only one person, Kismet Stam, one of his two secretaries. Sakina Fournay was his secretary, and Kismet Stam, who was her cousin, was another secretary. And that, of course, Murshid Goodenough was also a secretary. But he chose to take Kismet Stam with him to India, as he had taken her with him to the United States on that last journey in 1925 and 26. And it was a secret that he was coming to India. Why was that? Why would it be a secret that he was coming to India? took me a long time to figure these things out. I thought about them for years and years and years before suddenly the light went off and I saw Murshid had many very wealthy followers. If they had known he was coming to India, they would have booked their passage immediately. And it was not what he wanted. He didn't want all those people coming with him. I would hate to call his Murids baggage, but let's say he wanted to travel without encumbrances. Why did he come to India? One answer, of course, is that he had longed to come from India ever since he left. I mean, he was an Indian. People who grew up here always want to come back here. Their family is here, their heart is here. I mean, I'm not from India, but I always want to come back here. So I understand very well. But it wasn't just homesickness. There is an answer, and I probably will be controversial. I seem to be good at creating controversies. I don't know why. Not my intention at all. But the fact is that Murshid had been suffering the last years of his life. From about the time he turned 40, he had regular experiences of chronic pneumonia. This was not shared with his followers. The times when he was so ill that he could not be with them, he was in a room and they said he's on retreat. And this happened many, many times over those years. There was no cure or treatment for chronic pneumonia in the West, where he was, in France, in America, anywhere. No one had a successful method of treating him. So the principal reason that he came here was because he hoped that Ayurvedic medicine would provide him with a cure for this pneumonia. Kismet Stam, who wrote the delightful little book Rays about this time, says every place they went, the first thing Murshid did was visit a doctor. Everywhere. So that's what he was doing here. Did he know when he left that he would not return? I know the members of his family very, very well. Pir Vilayat, Pir Hidayat, Claire, everybody else. They're certain that Murshid knew that he was going to die when he came to India. I feel certain that Murshid did not know he was going to die when he came to India. First of all, he spoke with many people about the things he intended to do when he returned. Many instances of this. But of course, in some people's mind, Murshid was omniscient. And, he never made a mistake. He never took a false step. He knew everything. Well, for those people, then he must have known he was going to die. But I don't belong to that group. I think Murshid was a human being, an incredibly wonderful human being, a being whose greatness is such that it's really beyond my comprehension that anybody could possibly know the things that Murshid knew and the things that he taught. I just don't understand how anyone could know those things. I never will understand it. I mean, I can't. But I feel quite certain that he intended to return, and that the fact that his pneumonia recurred, became worse, was something that he accepted with great reluctance. If he had known that he was not going to return, do you think he would have left his family behind in Europe? Someone who loved his family so intensely? I don't think that's possible. But in any case, so here's what happened. They traveled around, they landed in what is now Pakistan, then part of India still. They went first to Baroda, then they went to other places, Lucknow, Murshid. His reputation preceded him in India, and he was asked to speak in many places, and he accepted some of those invitations. He traveled around, and as I said, went to every doctor he could find. They settled in Delhi only in the beginning of January and looked for lodging, and they found a nice little house called Tilak Lodge, north of here along the river, but not actually on the river, it's a bit inland from there. And it's a very funny story. There aren't many funny stories about Murshid in this period, but this one is, the house was owned by a pharmacist, and they went to him and asked him what the rent would be for the house. And Murshid wanted a few days to decide on whether to rent it or not. So after a few days, they went back and said, yes, we've decided we'll take the house. And the pharmacist said, oh, that's fine, but now the rent is twice as much. and they said, Murshid said, but why? The rent was such and such last week. He said, you should have taken it last week. In any case, they moved into the house. They lived there for almost a month before Murshid became quite ill. And then early in the morning on the 5th of February, he stopped breathing. And Kismet Stam says there was a very, very strong smell of roses in the room. Well, I visited Tilak Lodge. I wish I could remember what year. I think it was maybe 1995, but I'm not certain. In any case, there was a family living there. They were very kind people. They were followers of Sai Baba, as a matter of fact. And they,
Shirdi or?
I'm sorry?
Shirdi, Sai Baba, or Satya?
I'm not sure. Satya, I believe. Yeah. And in any case, they invited us into the house, and we went around, and I was wondering which room it was in which Murshid died. And as I was going through the house, I went into this one room, and there was an overwhelming smell of roses. Still, 50, 70, I don't know how many years later, the smell of roses was still there. I think the house is gone now. They were going to build an apartment building or something there. But in any case, I was very privileged to visit it. How did he come to be here? The Imam of the Nizamuddin Awliya complex became a friend of Murshid's. And his house was just up there. I mean, the building is still there, but you can't see it so well anymore. But there was a kind of balcony there, and Murshid was looking down on this land, which was a graveyard. That big tree that is next to his grave there is a kind of tree that typically grows in graveyards in India. And he looked out over it and he said, I should like to stay here forever. That was the only clue that Kismet or anybody else had where he would like to be buried. That was why they purchased this land. And this began here as something very small. It's grown to something much larger due to the generosity of many people over these 97 years. But it began as a very simple grave there. The one other story that I love is Kismet and Murshid went to the Jama Masjid and for prayers. And they were coming down the stairs, and there was a dervish who came up to Murshid and said, "I've been called to the court. I've been called to the court." And Kismet asked Murshid, so what did he mean? And Murshid said, "You'll soon see." So Murshid is in the court. We are here honoring his memory, feeling his presence, and bearing the responsibility of spreading the message of spiritual liberty. That is such almost a mind-boggling concept. Spiritual liberty. We say the words, but realize what that means. We are free. We're liberated. Thanks to Murshid. So let's express our gratitude and feel it every day. Every day. I've made a. Murshid says, "Where there is no gratitude, there is no God." That's pretty clear, isn't it? So I've made a list of all of the people I'm grateful to in my whole life. I'm 81 years old, so it's a pretty long list at this point. And every day I go through that list and give thanks for every one of those people. And at the head of that list is Pure Murshid Inayat. Now watch me fall down.
We can probably rise up after that.
Thank you.